First of all, congratulations to everybody who's spoken so far. Thank you guys so much for coming out here. Next up, as we mentioned, is Arjun. And when I first started at Teespring, you'll hear a little bit more about that story later. One of the first people that I ever interacted with was Arjun. And since our first email and our first interaction, he's went on to do multi-million-dollar sales in the t-shirt industry. He's the gentleman who, he and his team actually developed the Audience Intersect tool that was mentioned earlier that hones in on your targeting. And he is kind enough to have come out here to share some of the highest level insights in the industry with everybody here today. So without further ado, Arjun, come on down. I'm very happy to introduce him. One more time, Arjun Ohri.
Thank you, Vince. All right. Hello, my name is Arjun Ohri, and I'm the CEO and co-founder of Fanrock. So first off, thanks so much to Faberly and for Teespring for having me out here in London, and thanks to all of you guys for being here and showing initiative and taking interest in this, and I really hope this is valuable. So 2 years ago, I was working a very standard job in San Francisco at an online gaming company, and my partner and I launched a campaign on Teespring, and just serendipitously it tipped, and that changed our lives. We were able to leave our jobs. We spent basically almost the next 2 years selling as many shirts as we could, selling tons and tons of shirts, and learning a lot along the way. And we love this business because we find that it's the best combination, it's a perfect combination of creativity, data analytics, and just pure perseverance, continuing to try things out. And along the way, we learned a lot. We've also built tools and processes for ourselves to be able to sell more. And just a little bit more about us, what we see is there's a much bigger opportunity out there. We agree with both Teespring and Faberly that there's a huge opportunity beyond just being one seller. So what our company is going to be focused on is taking what we've learned and trying to help the community out there to sell more and enable them to basically sell more online. So that is, we call that company Fanrock, and this is our story. So the founders are myself, Arjun, and my partner, Andrew. He couldn't make it. He's back in San Francisco right now. I will say that the single partnering with Andrew has been the single most important and the biggest impact on this business and why I think that we've been successful. And not just because Andrew's incredibly smart, but this is actually a tough business. And many of you, especially if you've been an entrepreneur before, know how tough it can be. You have your high highs and you have your low lows, and you need somebody to just be talking with through all this process. And Andrew was that person for me. And if you don't have that person, I encourage you to look maybe in this group to meet them, ask Faberly or ask Teespring to put you in touch with other people in the community. But the community is very, very helpful, and it makes you feel less alone in this. So I'll tell you a little bit more about our backgrounds before diving into what we did. So Andrew, he's a very humble guy. He'll never admit this, but he actually worked at Facebook back in 2009. And actually, before then, he was living in the same. He went to Harvard and was living in the same dorms at the same time when Mark Zuckerberg started Facebook. So he was one of the first 100 people in the world who got on Facebook. So while he worked at Facebook, he was actually the guy who invented the @ tag. So when you're typing a status message in Facebook and you say @ and you can tag somebody, that was basically his feature. So Andrew and I met when we were product managers at Zynga. Zynga is an online game company, and I don't know how many of you have heard of games like Farmville or Cityville or Words with Friends, but we worked for the company that made these games. So we spent a lot of time, we spent countless hours learning how to actually run a business on Facebook. As you recall, that entire industry was based on Facebook. So understanding how virality works, how do you create something that means something at the emotional level to people, such that they actually want to share that with their friends, such that when they're sharing something, it says something about their personality that they're proud to share. So understanding that was very core for us to build games, and very core for us to be able to sell t-shirts later on. So we actually had $0 when we started selling t-shirts, and In the beginning, we tipped our first campaign without a single ad. I'll tell you exactly how we did that. And we started with the 2 of us, and now we have a team of 8 people. So we've hired other designers, a whole team of designers and engineers, and I can tell you more about the team makeup later on. Our first tipped campaign. This is the actual shirt that we used when we tipped our campaign. And it doesn't look like it's a big deal, but I'll explain to you how it came to be. Actually, when we got started, we weren't even trying to sell t-shirts. Andrew and I, we are huge sports fans, and we were actually genuinely interested in making a Facebook fan page, an unofficial fan page, so that we can communicate with other fans and just see a feed of interesting activity. And we realized that this did not really exist on Facebook for some of the sports teams and the athletes that we liked. So we created unofficial fan pages, and every day we'd go and post what we thought was just really interesting content. And we got these fan pages to grow. And our first fan page that we got to grow was for a basketball player who plays for the San Antonio Spurs. And I don't know how much you all know about basketball in the US, but this particular team is incredibly good, but they're not flashy. In fact, they play fundamental basketball. Some would even say it's very boring, but they win. They win very consistently. And they're not the people who you would see making the biggest shoe deals. They're not making all the commercials. And they tend to have, especially when they're in interviewing, they tend to be very nice, and they're not talking themselves up. So we were watching some games, and we saw a fan hold up a sign that said, "It's the quiet guys you should fear." And that really resonated with us, and actually it became kind of like a slogan for the team itself. So what we did was we put that on a shirt. "It's the quiet guys you should fear." And then we posted that on our Facebook page just as a test to see if anybody would buy it. And then it just took off. It went viral. So over the course of one weekend, we'd sold, I can't remember how many thousands we sold, but basically in one weekend, we found that this one shirt was basically did half of our year's salary. And so this blew our mind. It blew our mind not just that this many people bought it, but that there's this thing called Teespring that exists. And it was amazing. Like, all we did was come up with this design. You could have made this design just using the Teespring designer tool. But it was a message that really resonated with the crowd. And it was at the right place, at the right time, for the right people. And so what impressed me the most about this was we'd sold so many thousands of t-shirts, and yet we didn't see a single one. They were just almost magically, the payments were taken, they were shipped to all the customers individually. If there was any customer service or returns, it was just taken care of by Teespring. And it's easy for us, especially as sellers, to not see the behind-the-scenes work that goes on in companies like Teespring and Fabrily. But I have to say hats off to them for even enabling this to exist. Because 5 years ago, 3 years ago, this could not have been possible. So this really opened our eyes. We put on our notice to quit our jobs that next week. And we spent a couple years learning everything that we could about selling shirts. So Facebook newsfeed ads. I think a lot of people have talked about targeting and gotten into some depth, but this is just to catch everybody up. What people are talking about when they're talking about targeting is how do you show an advertisement in the Facebook newsfeed? And I wasn't sure if that was clear to everyone, so I just wanted to show a quick picture. This is what it would look like on the mobile phone. And especially when the newsfeed ad first came out, which was only about a year and a half ago. When it first came out, it was alongside the stuff that people are usually used to dealing with, it was alongside the stuff that they're used to seeing shared by their actual friends and by the pages they follow. So it had extremely high click-through rates, and it was very novel for there to be an ad in the newsfeed. So over time, it's diminished marginally, but still, Facebook has among the highest engagements of any social platform out there, and continues to. And if your targeting settings are good, if you create a good ad, and you can actually be that first spot as soon as somebody logs into Facebook, then that's gold. So that's basically what people are talking about when they say targeting settings for Facebook ads. So now now to scale. What I wanted to focus on for this conversation is how we went from just a side business, just a hobby, to turning it into a business. And just a little bit more of a backstory. It is true that we quit our jobs, but we did not quit our jobs to become t-shirt sellers. Actually, Andrew and I had been talking for a long time about leaving Zynga to start a healthcare company. So we developed this healthcare app to find nearby hospitals for a certain procedure, and we'd had these plans of starting a healthcare company. And what we thought was, maybe if we sold some t-shirts on the side, then we can basically fund ourselves so that we don't have to take investment early on. So that was our initial plan. It was a hobby to us. And we actually did that for many months. We were just designing for fun when we weren't working on our healthcare app. And there was a time when I think there was about a month straight where we made no progress on our healthcare app. We could not get a single customer for that. And it was during that exact time frame where our sales on t-shirts just continued to grow. And we said, okay, the universe is trying to tell us something. And so we put the healthcare business on hold, and we are selling t-shirts. So I hope to one day go back to selling, or to being in the healthcare industry, but we see this massive opportunity and this massive shift in the way that people create and consume and sell products around the world, and it's an honor to be a part of that. So this is very important because with Andrew and I, there was a key point where we said this is not going to be a hobby, this is going to be a business. And that changed the way we thought about it, and we did certain things very differently, and we thought about it in longer term. So I'm going to tell you what those things were for us. In general, this is the process. You start off with an audience first, and this is probably the most fundamental learning about this t-shirt industry. It doesn't start with just a good design. It starts with an audience of people who are passionate. And for us, we started off with Facebook pages and virality, so getting posts to go viral on Facebook. But after a while, Facebook cut down the reach of these pages, and we realized we can be far more effective if we paid for this reach via Facebook ads. And so another way to find audiences is through the targeting settings that you've seen talked about by Chris and by Ronnie and Suhail. And then lastly, there's been a lot of talk about Facebook so far, but Facebook is just the beginning. There's so many channels out there to reach an audience, especially if you've made your own email list. There's retargeting people who visit your websites or your blogs or any of your stores. Pinterest and Twitter are growing their platforms, and they're becoming a lot more sophisticated when it comes to ads. And then lastly is Google SEO. And this is just the start. There's going to be lots of different ad channels and places to reach your audience. But number one is you start with an audience. Now number two, how do you come up with designs, assuming you have the best way to reach an audience? And this is something where in the beginning, we tried to just come up with random designs we thought were working, or we thought would look cool on a shirt. But it wasn't until we started thinking about it more systematically that our approach shifted. So number one, the most important part about design is it's about the message that's on the shirt. And this is also a very different thing from the t-shirt business of 5 years ago and 10 years ago. If you think about the kind of stuff that sells really well at the mall kiosks or at Threadless, what you'll see is a lot of really cool looking graphic tees, things where the message is funny, or the humor is a little more subtle, and it's something that looks cool. But I'm telling you, it's very hard to sell a t-shirt that just looks cool. The t-shirt has to have a message, and this message has to mean something to whoever wears it, and it has to mean so much that they're willing to broadcast it to the world. And we all have those things. I mean, you can ask yourself, what are the things, how do you define yourself? And there's lots of things. There's your hobbies, there's your jobs, for many people it's their religion, ethnicity, the causes that they support, politics, and there's a whole slew of things. We got our starting with something that we were genuinely interested in. So it was easy for us to connect with the audience. And so finding a message that connects with the audience is the most important thing. I put fitting in versus standing out because what you'll find is for many people there are people who are really into running who have running shirts, or people who are into basketball who have basketball shirts. And you usually find two classes of people. Most people, and I would say the casual likers, they'll want to wear the stuff that maybe is branded with the logo that they're used to seeing. But the most hardcore fans, they actually want something that goes above and beyond. They want something that makes them stand out, so that they're more of a fan than just the average runner or the average person who's into basketball. So that's why this fitting in versus standing out matters a lot. If you're going after super fans, you want something that is sometimes even over the top for the casual users, but the really hardcore passionate fans will wear. And I put in quotes the Farmville mom. A lot of our designs when we started off were based on this archetype of the Farmville mom. And I say that because we spent years at Zynga making games for a certain audience of people. And this was usually, if I were to just make a general stereotype, it would be women who were in the late 30s through their late 50s. So generally a little bit older, and generally having discretionary income, and mostly, I would say, middle America. And they were, for Farmville, they were our most passionate users. They spent the most money in the games, and they were also the most engaged socially in that they would like and comment and share with their friends. And we actually found that same crowd was actually a lot of our buyers. So even, that shirt that we first saw, it's a quiet guys you should fear. What percentage do you think was women? It was a majority. It ended up being almost 2/3 were women. And there was no targeting back then. We looked at our page, and it was specifically for a male athlete. And yet the majority of our fans were women. So we thought about that whenever we came up with designs. And we asked all the Farmville moms we knew, would you wear this? And these are just some examples of designs that you'll see. Some are things that we've done. Some are things that we've thought were great designs that we found from the internet that we put up. The one on the left, Life Behind Bars, that's for people who are really interested in road biking. The middle, I'm all about that ace, is for people who like volleyball. Forget glass slippers. This princess wears cleats. That's for girls who play softball. And similarly, under new management, just married. It's self-explanatory. A night shift nurse, keeping him alive till 7:05. And then I became a teacher for the fame and money, which you show this to any teacher friends and for some reason it just resonates with them. It just means something to them, that design. So these are just examples of the kinds of designs that we would do.
That's ours. Night shift nurse.
Is it?
Yeah.
Oh, congratulations.
Well, Glenn's.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So, night shift nurse.
Night shift nurse.
Quite a few of those, actually.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. Any idea how much it sold? 800 hoodies. Not bad. You heard it first. Yeah. So we came up with the process to test these designs so that we were never launching a design without having some information about why it'll do well. And first we test the message. Remember I said it's the message that matters first. And then we'll test the design. And I'll explain exactly how we do that. What we'll do is on Facebook, we'll either on our fan page, if we have enough fans, we'll post. If we have enough fans, we'll just post this picture on Facebook. It's literally just that picture. You can imagine that square is cut out, and we post it. It says, vote for your favorite design. And what we type in, what we say is, type 1, 2, 3, or 4 in the comments to vote. And what we say is, and tell us why you like it. So we did this, and you'll notice here, this took a designer less than 10 minutes to put together, because what we told them was, don't worry about how good it looks. Just get the words on the shirt. So you can see we had 4 designs for people who were born in Brazil but live in the United States. Brazil made me, America raised me. Number 2 is I live in America, but my heart belongs to Brazil. Number 3 is proud to be Brazilian. 4 is made in Brazil. So can you guys guess which one of these you think was the winner? Okay, so already you hear so many different numbers, and you know, if you talk to 5 different designers, you'll get 5 different opinions, or I guess 4 different opinions. But the actual answers was number 1. So what we did was every time we launched a design, we would put one of these things up just with the messages first, and we'd find the message that resonated. So here, let's try another one. Then after we find a message that resonates, then we'll see, okay, what's the design that best captures that message? So do you guys want to take a guess? There's Proud to be a Smith is number 1. Number 2 is Team Smith. Number 3 is, of course, I'm awesome, I'm a Smith. Number 4 is Team Smith lifetime member. 3. And you'll see, I mean, this is, we got something like, 70, 80 votes and we probably spent $5 to $10 to get these results. And that's huge because if we didn't spend that, then we would have probably had to spend money on number 1, Proud to be a Smith, and would have probably lost a lot of money.
Arjun, are you running these on the fan page?
Yeah, this is a good question. So it depends on where you have the traffic. So you have, we say you have 3 options. Number 1 is if you have a fan page that has enough fans and enough reach so that you can put a post and get enough results. What we usually do on our fan pages is we'll want to put it up, and we'll get maybe 100 to 200 responses in the first 20, 30 minutes, and then we'll just delete the ad. Or it's not even an ad, it's just a post. The second option is if you don't have a fan page with followers, you just run this as an ad. So you run it as a page post engagement ad, which means Facebook will find people who are most likely to comment and like anyways, and you get them to post. The third is if you've already ran a shirt to a similar group of people, similar audience, you can just email them and ask which one they like. So we'll do one more. Oh, I guess the answer is there. But this specific one was we wanted to test because we know that if you add more colors, we know that it costs more. The unit costs are more. So what we wanted to do, and completely recognizing this test is not completely fair, but what we wanted to do is find a rough assessment for if we added a splash of color, what would that do to our conversions? And you can see, sure enough, it did 4x as well, almost 4x as well as the next best one. So this is really important because we did this before we designed a single shirt on Teespring. There was no Teespring campaign. There's just this ad. So one more. We eventually got to the point where we wanted to find messages that did well, and it was hard to come up with these messages on our own. So what we would do is we would do Google searches, we'd do Google shopping searches, we would look on other t-shirt sites. Zazzle is a good option, as Chris mentioned. And we found 4 shirts for nurses, and we wanted to find out which one resonated the most. Do you guys have any ideas on which one did? Yeah, so it was the second one, and so it wasn't just, and we wanted to answer for ourselves. We'd seen the cute enough to stop your heart, skilled enough to restart it. We'd seen that message around. What we did not know is this actually the best message, or is this actually is this under optimized because there's another message that will actually sell more. So we ran a number of these voting just to find out if that was indeed the message that was the best one. And what we found was it actually turned out to be the message with the most votes. It's unclear to us whether that's because it's actually the best message or because people started seeing it in their feeds and they started liking it. But regardless, this helps us answer the question. So is this helpful?
Yeah, very good. Can I ask a question? Sorry.
Sure.
If you run 2 designs and you're getting like one is slightly lower than the other, would you then take those 2 designs and say, you know what, we'll just run them both?
Yes, we would. Oftentimes, actually, if we'd run a grid like this and we'd find that we'd see, 2 or 3 that were kind of even, oftentimes that would tell us we don't have the right design. Because when you have the right design, you'll know it. It'll be far and away the winner. And especially with the strategy that most people do, which is you market 1 ad at a time, you want to make sure that that shirt that you're advertising is the absolute best. So if we had 3 that were relatively even, maybe we'll do another design pass and figure out what it'll take to have 1 winner arise.
I was talking more about when you were going after, the messages, not but when you
I
were
see.
the Brazil one. If you've got one that's kind of, you're like, oh, okay, take those two and run with both of them?
Yeah, we've done that in the past. If we have two messages that do really well and two that don't, we take the two that did well and we'd run another grid test.
Okay.
So, yes?
Do you look for a minimum response rate or anything like that?
Yeah, we look for statistical significance is going to be, you need at least 50 or 60.
But in percent-wise, if
Oh.
they're not responding, is that a sign for you?
Yeah, if they're not responding, that means they don't like anything. And so, you know, if you don't, I don't know the numbers off the top of my head, but if you post to a fan page that has tens of thousands of fans, and you spent more than 20 or 30 minutes and you don't have 100 votes, that means they're all bad.
Have you ever had an even split across all four?
We have, and again, that just means that we haven't found the right one. That means we keep.
You just go back to the drawing board.
Yeah, let's go test some more. So one really important thing here is I talked about the two steps. One is you test the message, and two is you test the actual design. Usually what happens is when we test the actual design, we take the same exact message, and our designers will come up with 4 different ways to reflect that. And the reason that's important is because for each kind of audience or each niche, it's hard to understand exactly how they'll react. So the way that the text looks on a shirt for nurses is going to look very different from the text for gun owners, for example. And that's really important to get because it actually would be difficult to know if people who are gun owners want a skull on their shirt or not. You want to test out 4 different ways of presenting the same message. Any other questions before I move on?
Where do you get the designers from?
Oh, that's a really good question. The question was, where do we get our designs from? And that's why I want to say hiring designers. I couldn't have planned that better. So
I preempted him to tell it.
So a year ago, the designer was me. I was sitting there in Photoshop, coming up with each design, sometimes just using the Teespring and the tools to, just a designer tool to come up with designs. And I found that it was very slow. It would take me a long time. And I'm not a designer by trade, and Photoshop was something that I basically learned on my own through a set of tutorials. So part of this whole process of going from a hobby to a business meant that we should get actual designers so that it can free us up to do other things. That's why I'll say if I said the number one best decision I made was working with Andrew, the number 2 decision is hiring our designer, Paolo. And I'll explain exactly how we hired him. And now actually we have a team of designers. Paolo is our lead designer. And so he's responsible for coming up with the templates and coming up with the best designs. And then we have a team of designers that are used to scale out these designs. So if you say keep calm, I'm a nurse, and you want to expand that to maybe 50 different occupations, I don't want Paolo doing that. I want him to use some of his outsourced staff to do that. So I'll explain this process. So the first thing we did was we put a job posting on Craigslist. You can also do that with Fiverr or Odesk, or is it Gumtree? Is that what's used here? Yeah. Okay. So and I'll explain exactly what we did that led to getting us the candidates that we did. So we were very specific with what we were asking for. We said that candidates should have excellent English skills or whatever your native tongue is, because you're going to be talking to them a lot, and especially already there's enough nuance in coming up with messages for different niches that you don't want to have things be lost in translation. So having excellent English skills or whatever your native tongue, having the candidates submit sample designs or portfolio, preferably for t-shirts, is great. That way you'll get the people who are really excited about selling t-shirts to submit. That's also important because when we hired, we found that there were a ton of people who were designers, but some of them would be web designers, or they would design posters. And there's something special about t-shirt designs. There's a level of detail that makes the design look cool and intricate, and yet very readable. And that's a skill in and of itself. So if it really helps if they are a t-shirt designer and can send you t-shirt samples. Then what we did was we took the best people from the job posting, and we asked them to submit an assignment to us. And this was important for a number, and so I'll tell you what it was. we gave them two different assignments. One is we gave them a link to a Teespring campaign, and we said, okay, here's a Teespring campaign, make us an ad. And we gave the rough dimensions for what a Facebook ad should be. We said, make us an ad. And then and we gave descriptions on it should be very readable, and it should be a strong call to action, and the shirt should be very visible on the ad. And then number two is, given a message, like the messages that we showed you, come up with 3 different designs for this message. Because that's the kind of thing the designer will be doing a lot. You can say Brazil made me, America raised me, and come up with 4 different ways of presenting this. So this was important because this is very reflective of the kind of work that they'd be doing, A. And B is it would actually weed out a lot of candidates that probably won't be willing to do extra work. So that was really important. And then lastly is the interview. So what we did was we had in-person interviews that happened in San Francisco. I would say we had 80% of people actually come in to interview, and for the remainder, we did a screen share where we asked, we used a screen sharing program, and we asked questions over screen share. And what we asked them to first do is, and this process was incredibly easy. There's tools out there which basically let you block off interview slots on your Google Calendar, and then automatically a website will be created where the interviewees can sign up for 20-minute slots. So all we did in our calendar was said, okay, we're going to interview people on Monday and Tuesday during these hours, and then we sent an email out to everyone saying sign up on this link, and then in a day people had their sign-up slots done, and they just showed up, and we interviewed them. So that was very easy. We asked candidates to walk through their assignment, and then what we did was we gave them a series of just rapid-fire tests to test their intuition. So what we would do is we'd find a ton of shirts, mostly ones that have sold on Teespring, not even necessarily ours, and we'd find examples of ones that did not tip, so good shirts and bad shirts. And what we wanted to test for was, does this designer, can he come up with a logical reason for why the good shirts did well and the poor shirts did poorly? And oftentimes it's very obvious. It's, these 2 colors are fighting against each other, so the contrast is not enough. This font is too small, or this image is a little scary looking for nurses, or whoever you're targeting. And we wanted to make sure that our intuition was more or less aligned with what the designer was thinking. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And so that's how we found, and at the end of this, I would say we posted our job, we had the job posting, and we got about 200 responses in 3 days. And then we asked the good candidates to submit their assignment, and so we had 100 people submit their assignment, and then we had 40 who we invited for an interview. And in the end, we hired 1 person. But what we also did was the 39 people who, out of the 39 people who didn't make it, half of those were legitimately good designers. So we took those and we put them in what's called what we call the Fanrock Artist Network, which is basically if we're strapped for time and we have a ton of designs that we want to get out, we can tap our network to have them come up with designs that on a one-off basis. So some other questions that people have asked is, how do you pay your designers? How long did this process take? And what else should we be looking for? Payment-wise, we've actually done all of these with different designers. In the beginning, we were really worried about having enough cash to pay our designers. So what we would say is, you only get paid for a tipped design. So maybe we'd say like $10 or $20 for a design that tips. And we'd tell them that historically, our tip rate was whatever it was at the time, which this was early days, so it was like 70, 80%. And so people could basically, so the designers would know that if they can work faster to earn more revenue, or the quality could improve for them to earn more revenue. We also paid sometimes just per design. That's actually what we do for any outsource, more inexpensive designers, especially if you're saying keep calm and some message here. That's incredibly easy to do. So what we do is we say for those, maybe they're $1 to $2 each design. And what they deliver is the design, the printer image, as well as the ad images and any other marketing that we need. eventually, we paid Paolo hourly, and because he was so good, he's just a full-time member of our staff, and we pay him bonus if business is good. I talked about the length and looking for superpowers. So if you actually follow those steps that I mentioned, what you're going to find is you're going to have more than one really qualified artist. What we found in Paolo is not only is he a good designer, but he's a very witty, smart guy, and he just has a knack for copywriting. So he became the guy who writes all of our ads, writes all of our copies for all of our websites, or all of our pages, sorry. And that's huge because that's time that it saves me from having to do. And he's actually much better at it. And also, because he has a strong interest in design, he's researching t-shirts just on his own free time. And so he has a strong passion for it. So I call that kind of his superpower. And then lastly is template designer versus scaling designer. Paolo is great. He can do either of those, but we have him do our templates, and then we have him farm out the designs to get scaled to more inexpensive designers. What I would say for all of you is, Teespring and Fabrily are both great in that they have in-house designers, and if you work with them through the process and you give them enough advance notice, that's actually a great resource. And early on in our business, they were very helpful for us. All right. Any questions about hiring a designer?
Did you put in non-competes or anything like that?
We did not. No, I wasn't too worried about that.
What about non-disclosure agreements? Do you have anything in place?
We do have a non-disclosure agreement saying that, and we just put it out. We actually just found a very boilerplate contract that we gave the designers, and it just happened to have that. All right, I'm going to move on. How are we doing on time? 15 minutes. Okay, I'll try to run through as much as I can. Scaling your business. It takes a ton of campaigns. So one thing we found is that the way we can earn more revenue is by scaling our campaigns up, which means spending more money to have individual campaigns sell more, or scale out. And when we say scale out, that means taking the message and slightly tweaking it to be a different audience. So you can, or spin-off, however you want to call it. So I'm not going to go in too much detail about this, but I will say that a year ago on Teespring, if you would look at the leaderboard and what people were actually selling, it was very different from what it is now. A year ago, everyone wanted to go after the major hits. Everybody was chasing those campaigns that sold 2,000, 3,000 and more. And so what they'd do is they'd kind of do this spray approach where they would maybe get a 10 to 20% tip rate, but the ones that tip would sell a lot. And we made the decision to not do that. We said we don't want a 10 to 20% tip rate. We want to get a 60 to 70% tip rate. And we want to find something that is actually scalable to a bunch of different things. So remember that shirt, it's the quiet guys you should fear? We will never run a shirt like that again. I guess I don't want to say never, but I would much rather choose something that can apply to a lot of different audiences than that single shirt, because it's really hard to scale that up. So this is a graph that shows that over time, how much of our revenue came from different classes of shirts. So each color here represents a different, what we call template. So maybe the blue will be keep calm, IMA, insert job title here. And that will actually mean 50 campaigns, but it'll just be under that blue. And what we found is this is a content business, which means that if you're coming up with some content, it'll spike in the beginning and do really well, but after a while it saturates. All the sellers, all the people who would buy it already bought it, and you're just wasting money trying to get other sellers. So what you have to constantly do is come up with new content. So as an example here is, I think we did graduation shirts, and that's what this orange was. And you can see it started at one time when graduation was nearing, and it had a very sharp drop-off later on when the graduation season was done. So I show this to illustrate that it takes launching lots and lots of campaigns. And at any given time, I think at our peak we had hundreds, maybe like 300 to 400 campaigns running simultaneously. So that leads to the question: how do you actually manage all of this data? And what we did for the longest time was we just used Google Docs and Excel spreadsheets to keep track of all of our Facebook spend and our ROI data. Eventually, what we found was that data was the main reason why we were not able to effectively manage our ad spend. And so what Andrew and I did was we invested in trying to learn how to do very rudimentary coding so that we can build a dashboard for ourselves that basically showed all of your Teespring campaigns and then showed right next to it how much you're spending per day on a Facebook campaign. And so it basically put all this information that you need right next to each other. So instead of having to assemble this spreadsheet, it was just automatically there, and you just run through everything really quickly. And for the things that are doing well, you can up the budget, and for the ones that are not, you can just pause it directly without having to go into Facebook. So every marketer that we've talked to has a different approach to that. And I do know that Teespring is building in this functionality for Facebook sellers. I'm not sure exactly when it'll be ready for the prime time. And that's also something that we're thinking about. We're trying to figure out how do we actually get that out in the hands of people. So this is kind of what our dashboard will look like. You're not expected to be able to read all the individual numbers, but maybe let me just walk you through what things we look at. So and each line will have the name of the campaign. It'll say how many ad sets and ad groups. So if you click here, it'll actually expand and show you each different ad set. It'll say how many sales, how much you spent in that day, and how many sales you generated, and that basically comes into this CPA number, a cost per acquisition or cost per sale number. So this campaign is really good because it costs us $4 to sell a shirt. This one is about break even because it's $12, and this one is very poor. We did not sell a lot of Pi Day is Coming shirts because it costed us $25 to sell a shirt. So we just paused that. So
Sorry, is this something that you built and then plugs into your Facebook account through the API?
Yes, it is.
That is.
Yeah, I want to. Yeah, exactly. I want to mostly show this to be illustrative of the kind of data that we look at. And at first, if it's costing you way too much. So, for example, in this Proud Irish Roots, it's $12. So we're not sure whether to kill it or continue to run it. So then what we do is we look at our CTR and our CPM and our CPC. And what we find is our CTRs at roughly 5% are still good. So there's still a chance that maybe we just didn't get enough clickers or enough buyers this day, but maybe we could the next day. And if CTR is good, then you can look at maybe your CPM. There are cases when you'll get very, very high click-through rates and you're getting people very excited about your ad, but your targeting is so tight or in a place that's so competitive that your CPM is going to be maybe $12, $15, in which case, even with the high click-through rate, you're not going to be able to be profitable. Let me get through the next thing. So this is how we target. And this took us a long time to figure out, and is actually really has made it so that, especially in niches that we've sold in before, we can almost guarantee success when we sell more. And we call it the concentric circles of targeting. So in the very beginning, we start off with previous buyers within your niche. So you just target people who have hit your conversion pixel, people who have purchased before. And this could be either targeting through Facebook, just targeting people who hit this conversion pixel, or it could be just emailing your list of buyers. And what you do is, the reason you start with this group is this is your most passionate group. So if you have a design and it doesn't sell with this group, you should just get rid of that and work on your next design. But if it does sell to this group, then you can branch out to a bigger audience. And now you can add in all the previous website clickers. So all the people who have clicked on any one of your ads or visited any one of your campaigns that have to do with this specific niche. And then if that's successful, then you branch out to even a bigger audience, which is long tail keywords. And that's using the tactics that Chris talked about, where you're finding, he did that for golf, where he finds the keywords that only the most passionate people would be into. And if that continues to do well, then you can make that even bigger. You can use a lookalike audience on Facebook to get a bigger audience. And eventually, if all of that works, if you have like an amazing shirt that people who are even lightly into golf like, then maybe you could actually use that first targeting that was on the board, where you just say people who like golf or Tiger Woods.
I have a question about this. I mean, in our business, we're focused on going deep into a limited number of niches because we think the long-term asset of building up the page is good.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we hit our previous buyers, but usually I hit the long tail first just to see if the shirt's even going to sell or not. Because I don't want to ignore I don't want to annoy all my previous buyers by constantly mailing new designs.
That's true. Yeah, you have to be careful about burning out your previous buyers.
I mean, I don't want to hit them with stuff I know at least has got some.
Yeah.
I mean, I wanted to.
So maybe the way you do that is a little different. Maybe what you do is it's more of a limited design. It's more of a, maybe you message it as like a just for buyers of your store, or it's just for people who are in the club, and you just see how the reaction is to see if they like your shirt or not, because they have to like your shirt. And I'm not sure how often you plan to be reaching out to these people, but once or twice a week is actually totally reasonable. If you are an avid golfer and you're the kind of person who's going to buy shirts related to golf, then getting a new design, a new exclusive design once or twice a week is actually that's actually a delight.
This is really interesting, by the way.
Like I wish I got like 1 or 2 new shirts a week for my favorite basketball team. So, oops. Okay.
This is really good stuff.
Okay, let me get back. Those are all the circles. Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
5 minutes. So let me just get through really quickly. Optimized demographic targeting. One thing is, if you do have this is maybe a little bit more advanced. So supposing you do have a campaign that is successful, or maybe you have a campaign that's been running for 1 or 2 days. That's a great opportunity to look into your Facebook insights and figure out. Facebook will tell you that within the audience of people you're marketing to, this is the various click-through rates, and this is how many sales you're getting for male versus female, for different age ranges, and for different ad placements like desktop versus mobile, iPhone versus Android. And that's really important because oftentimes this happens to us all the time. We have a campaign that performs moderately well, maybe break even, and what you'll realize is we're wasting a lot of money targeting an age range that just won't buy. And so what we'll do is we will research with Facebook's reports and figure out what's selling well and what's not, and then we'll change our ad targeting. This is also something that we built tools around to make this faster for us. People ask this question all the time, but they ask PPE versus website conversion. We don't have a lot of time, so should I skip this?
No.
No. Okay. Just to explain what this is, PPE is page post engagement, and WC is website conversion. And what this is this is telling Facebook what to optimize for when they're making when you're purchasing ads. Page post engagement means that you're going to find people who are more likely to like and share and comment, meaning that your ad can go very viral. We like to use page post engagement when your targeting is already very good. It's already very narrow. You know that this group of people you've been successful selling to them before, and they are buyers. In that case, your goal is to not only show it to them, but have them like and share, and you want to get the people who are basically their friends. And so that's when you use PPE when you don't need further optimization from Facebook. And it usually ends up best for campaigns where you're going to see a big spike, and it'll die down after maybe 5 days. For website conversion, that's good for really broad audiences. Like you want to reach grandparents or nurses or something that has more than 100,000 people in the audience, and you want to run it for 5 days, for more than 5 days. What Facebook does is, as soon as Facebook takes kind of shots in the dark in terms of targeting, and as soon as it finds some people who hit your pixel, meaning as soon as it finds some buyers, what Facebook will constantly do is Facebook will automatically optimize for you. It will find other buyers who look like that, and so your targeting will improve over time. Oftentimes, this can take anywhere from 1 to 3 days for Facebook to figure it out, but when it does figure it out, then you can imagine that Facebook's just going to continue to improve your targeting over time. Audience intersect. This was covered by Ronnie and Suhail. This was actually what we noticed at Fanrock was Facebook continues to come up with new targeting settings, but the way they do it is first they release it to the API, then they'll release it to their just power sellers, people who are using, and it'll just be maybe show up in Power Editor for 1% of advertisers. And only after many months of testing will they actually release it to the public. So what we like to do is we keep abreast of all the new changes that Facebook does, and we try to use those targeting settings. And this was an example of one that we used that was really useful for us, but we realized that the whole market would actually have a lot more benefit from it. So we released that basically partnering with Teespring. And what it allows you to do is target the intersection of two different interests. So people who like Rottweilers as well as nursing. There was previously no way to target this before on Facebook, and now with this tool it lets you do it. And this is important because once you know, knowing two things about your audience is way better than knowing just one. And this enables you to sell the kinds of shirts that were just never possible in the old world of brick and mortar retail. You can't actually sell a shirt saying this nurse loves her Rottweiler or I love running and wine, because finding the intersection is hard to do in the real world, but now you can do that on Facebook. Just almost done. I'll give a couple more tidbits. Multi-product ads is another example of something that just came out a couple weeks ago. Basically, Facebook allows you to have in one ad, in one newsfeed post, a whole carousel of different products. So if you're running ads and you haven't tested this, I definitely encourage you to do this, especially for people who've done maybe 4 or 5 different shirts to the same audience. Like if you know that you understand runners really, really well and you've had 4 or 5 successful shirts, this is the best way for you to advertise those 4 shirts and get buyers without competing against yourself. Almost done. That's actually it. So, so we are Fanrock. Thanks a lot. Yeah.